They say you never feel the knife when it first slides between your ribs. For me, it was poison, not a blade. I came home victorious from war to my beautiful wife, Elena. She smiled as she poured my special wine, her eyes hiding secrets I was too blind to see. As my body burned from the inside, I watched her lover Marcus step from the shadows of our bedroom. The man I called brother, who vanished years ago only to return when I became someone worth killing. It was always him, Elena whispered while I choked on my own blood. They planned to rule with my title, my wealth, my life. But the gods gave me a cruel gift. I woke up 5 years earlier, before I met her, before I loved her. This time, I wouldn't be the fool who died for love. This time, she would watch as I took everything they dreamed of. I always imagined death would be peaceful, that when my time came, I would face it with honor, with dignity, surrounded by those who loved me. Instead, I died, choking on my own, blood with the sweet scent of foxglove filling my lungs, staring into the eyes of the woman who swore to love me until death. It happened on the night of my triumphant return from the Northern Campaign. The imperial banner flew above our estate as I rode through the gates, weary from battle but eager to see my wife. Elena waited on the steps, a vision in jade silk, her smile as radiant as I remembered during those cold nights at the front. "My hero returns," she said, taking my hands in hers. Her touch was cool against my skin, familiar yet somehow different. The servants prepared a feast to celebrate my victory, but Elena insisted on pouring my wine herself. "A special brew," she told me, "infused with honey and spices to welcome you home." She raised her cup to mine, her eyes never leaving my face as I drank deeply. The wine tasted different, sweeter than usual, with a bitter undercurrent I attributed to the herbs. It was only when the burning began in my stomach that I realized something was wrong. "Elena," I gasped, reaching for her as the cup fell from my trembling fingers. "Something's wrong with the wine." Her expression didn't change. Not concern, not panic, just a steady, patient gaze as I clutched at my throat. My breath came in ragged gasps, my vision blurred. The room tilted sideways as I collapsed onto the marble floor. That's when I saw him. Marcus, my childhood friend, my brother in arms, the man who disappeared 5 years ago after a failed bid for the Emperor's favor. He stepped from the shadows behind the silk screen, his face a mask of cold satisfaction. "You're early," Elena said to him, not bothering to kneel beside my convulsing body. "I couldn't miss this," Marcus replied, his voice thick with something like reverence. The mighty General Zhao, felled not by enemy blades, but by a woman's hand. I tried to speak, to ask why, but my tongue felt swollen in my mouth. Blood trickled from the corner of my lips, pooling beneath my cheek on the cold floor. Elena finally knelt beside me, stroking my hair as if soothing a child. "Don't fight it, my love. It will only make the pain worse." Her voice was tender, almost regretful. "Why?" I managed to rasp. She leaned close, her lips brushing my ear. "It was always him," she whispered. "From the moment we were children. Before you. Before everything. I was his, and he was mine." The truth hit harder than the poison. Memories flashed before my eyes. Elena's unexplained absences. Letters hidden away. The strange melancholy that would overcome her at the mention of Marcus's name. I had attributed it to grief for a lost friend. How blind I had been. "The Emperor has promised him governorship of the western provinces once you're gone," she continued, still stroking my hair. "We'll rule there together, far from the capital, far from memories of you." Marcus knelt on my other side, his face coming into view. "Your sacrifice won't be in vain, old friend. I'll care for your wife. I'll honor your memory." His words were poison, far deadlier than what coursed through my veins. My vision darkened at the edges. My breaths came in shallow, wet gasps. I could feel my heartbeat slowing, my limbs growing cold. "I loved you," I whispered to Elena, though I wasn't sure if the words actually left my lips. "I know," she replied, and I thought I saw a tear slip down her cheek. "That's what made it so easy," Those were the last words I heard before darkness claimed me completely. Then, impossibly, light. I gasped awake, my heart pounding, my body drenched in sweat. Gone was the palace floor, the taste of poison, the faces of my betrayers. Instead, I found myself in a military tent, oil lamps burning low, the sounds of an army camp filtering through the canvas walls. I sat up, touching my throat, my chest, confirming that I was whole, alive. A dream then, but it had felt so real. The pain, the betrayal, Elena's words still echoing in my mind. "General, are you well?" A young soldier stood at the entrance. To my tent, concern etched across his face. I recognized him. Liu Wei, one of my most loyal men. But Liu Wei had died 3 years ago in the Battle of Crow's Pass. "What day is it?" I demanded, my voice hoarse. "The 15th day of the 4th month, sir." He looked confused. "The day before we march for the capital." Impossible. That would make it nearly 5 years before my death. Before I even met Elena, I dismissed Liu Wei with a wave, then stumbled to the small desk where my campaign journal lay open. The date confirmed what he had said. 5 years. 5 years before I returned victorious from the Northern Campaign. 5 years before my wife poisoned me for the Crown Prince's favor. I was being given a second chance, an opportunity to rewrite a future that had already claimed my life once. That night, I didn't sleep. I pored over my memories, sorting truth from dream, trying to make sense of what had happened. Was it possible that the gods had seen fit to send me back? Or was this some cruel hallucination, the last firing of neurons in a dying brain? Either way, I knew what I had to do. If this was real, if I truly had been given another chance at life, I would not waste it. I would find Elena again. I would let her fall in love with me again. I would marry her, cherish her, watch her, and I would wait for Marcus to return. By dawn, my plan was set. I would play the game differently this time. I would be the hunter, not the prey. I would become what they feared most, a man with nothing to lose and everything to gain. The campaign was successful, just as it had been the first time. I led my men to victory against the northern tribes, earning the Emperor's favor and a hero's welcome upon my return to the capital. And there, at a garden reception held in honor of the returned generals, I saw her for the first time. Again. Elena stood beneath a flowering cherry tree, more beautiful than my memory had preserved. Her dark hair fell in waves down her back, her smile radiant as she conversed with the daughters of other noble families. My heart constricted at the sight of her. Despite everything, despite knowing what she would become, what she would do, I still felt the pull of her. I approached slowly, deliberately, remembering exactly how our first meeting had gone before. She turned at my approach, our eyes met, and I saw no recognition there, no malice, only curiosity and something like appreciation. "General Zhao?" she said with a respectful bow, "the hero of the North. Your reputation precedes you." I bowed in return, a smile playing at my lips. "All exaggeration, I assure you. And you are?" "Elena Wu, daughter of Minister Wu of the Imperial Treasury." "A pleasure to make your acquaintance, Lady Wu." This time, when I took her hand, I felt no thrill of discovery, only the cold calculation of a man who knew exactly where this path led and was determined to change its course. This time, I would be ready when the poison came. In my past life, I had been drawn to Elena like a moth to flame, blind to anything but her beauty and charm. This time, I watched her with the detached interest of a scholar studying a particularly fascinating specimen. I noted how her laughter never quite reached her eyes when speaking with those she deemed beneath her, how she artfully steered conversations to extract useful information, how her gaze lingered hungrily on displays of wealth and power. I courted her with calculated precision, learning all I could about her past. In my previous life, I had known only that she was Minister Wu's daughter, raised in luxury and educated in the arts befitting a noble daughter. This time, I made subtle inquiries, piecing together the story she had never shared with me. Elena had grown up alongside Marcus, the son of a rival minister. They had been inseparable as children, their families encouraging the connection with hopes of a political marriage. But when Marcus's father fell from the emperor's favor, the betrothal plans collapsed. Marcus was sent away to serve in a border garrison, a graceful form of exile. Elena was left behind, her future suddenly uncertain. "You seem to know Minister Li's son," I remarked one evening as we walked through the palace gardens, carefully, watching her reaction. A flicker of something passed across her face. "Marcus? Yes, we were childhood companions. That was long ago." "I served with him briefly before his reassignment," I lied. He spoke fondly of the capital. "Did he mention me?" The question slipped out before she could stop herself. I pretended not to notice her eagerness. No, he was rather private about his past. Disappointment shadowed her features before she masked it with a smile. As one should be. "The past is best left buried, wouldn't you agree, General?" "Unless it refuses to stay dead," I replied with a smile of my own. Our courtship progressed swiftly, just as it had before. Elena was drawn to my rising star in the imperial court, my favor. With the emperor, the lands and titles promised to me upon marriage, I played the besotted suitor, writing her poetry, sending her gifts, escorting her to imperial functions where all could see the handsome general and his beautiful bride-to-be. Behind my loving facade, I studied her every reaction, catalogued every lie. I tested her with small provocations, mentioning Marcus casually to watch her eyes brighten before she controlled her response. I spoke of my military campaigns, watching how she feigned interest while subtly steering the conversation toward my political connections. When I proposed, I chose the imperial gardens where we had first met, kneeling before her with a jade ring that had cost a general's annual salary. "Elena Wu," I said, looking up into those beautiful, calculating eyes, "would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Her joy seemed genuine as she accepted. Perhaps in that moment it was. I rose and slipped the ring onto her finger, then kissed her with all the passion she expected from her warrior lover. As I held her, I wondered if, in some parallel world, this moment might have led to happiness for us both. But I had died by her hand once. I would not offer my throat again. The wedding was a grand affair, befitting a favored general and a minister's daughter. The emperor himself attended, bestowing gifts and blessings upon our union. I stood proud, in my dress uniform, watching Elena glide toward me in her red bridal robes, her face hidden behind a traditional veil. As she took her place beside me, I scanned the crowd of well-wishers. I knew Marcus would not be there, not yet, but I searched for his family members, connections that might later provide him entry back into court life. Minister Li, his father, stood toward the back, his once proud bearing diminished by years of disfavor, but his eyes sharp with calculation as they rested on my bride. The ceremony proceeded according to tradition. We bowed to heaven and earth, to the ancestors, to each other. We drank from cups of wine tied with red string, symbolizing our unbreakable bond. When I lifted Elena's veil to seal our union with a kiss, I caught the briefest glance cast over my shoulder toward Minister Li. In that moment, I knew. The seeds of betrayal were already planted. It was only a matter of time before they bore their poisonous fruit. Our early marriage was a performance worthy of the imperial theater. I played the devoted husband, showering Elena with affection and gifts, making a show of consulting her on household matters, presenting her proudly at court functions. She, in turn, played the adoring wife, managing our household with flawless efficiency, charming my military colleagues, whispering sweet encouragements as I prepared for imperial council meetings. Beneath this perfect surface, I maintained a careful distance. I kept a separate study where I spent long hours on military strategy, though in truth I was building my network of spies and informants. I traveled frequently on the emperor's business, establishing connections with merchants, officials, and nobles across the kingdom. I became known as a rising political force, no longer merely a military hero, but a man of influence and ambition. Elena noticed the change. How could she not? The man she married was gradually transforming before her eyes. "You've changed since our wedding," she remarked one night as we prepared for bed. She sat at her dressing table, removing her jewels, watching my reflection in the mirror. "War changes a man," I replied, the practiced answer ready on my lips. "And now politics. A different kind of battlefield, but no less dangerous." "You're distant?" she persisted, turning to face me directly. "Sometimes I feel you're looking through me rather than at me." I crossed the room to her, taking her hands in mine. "Forgive me. The responsibilities weigh heavily. The Emperor relies on me more each day." "More reason you should rely on me," she said, squeezing my hands. "I am your wife, your partner. Let me help shoulder your burdens." I kissed her forehead, marveling at her performance. Did she believe her own lies? Or was she already planning, even now, how to use my position to pave the way for Marcus's return? "You help me more than you know," I told her, the only honest words I'd spoken that night. As the months passed, I carefully crafted my public image as an ambitious but distant husband. I ensured rumors reached Elena's ears about my political aspirations, my growing influence with the Emperor, my ruthless dealings with rivals. I wanted her to see me as valuable but emotionally unavailable, creating a void in her heart that would be all too easy for Marcus to fill when he returned. And return he would. I had made certain of it. Through carefully placed bribes and subtle influence, I arranged for Marcus's rehabilitation. His military record was quietly amended to show exemplary service. Recommendations for his return to the capital began circulating among the right officials. Minister Li, sensing the shifting winds, began appearing more frequently at court functions. All the while, I watched Elena grow restless. She spent more time with other court ladies, attended more social functions without me, wrote more letters that disappeared before I could see their contents. She tried repeatedly to pierce the wall I had built between us, alternating between seduction and confrontation, tenderness and tears. I gave her just enough hope to keep her from despair, just enough distance to keep her searching for connection elsewhere. It was a cruel game, perhaps, but no crueler than the death she had planned for me. When word finally came that Marcus Li had been recalled to the capital to serve on the Imperial War Council, I made sure I was watching Elena when the news was announced at court. The flash of shock quickly masked the flush of color in her cheeks, the way her fingers tightened involuntarily on her fan. "An old friend of yours returns," I commented casually as our palanquin carried us home that evening. "Hardly a friend," she said with practiced indifference. "A childhood acquaintance, nothing more." I took her hand, squeezing it gently. "Then you won't mind if I invite him to dine with us? For old time's sake. I served briefly with him years ago. It would be good to renew the connection." Elena's smile was perfect, betraying nothing. "Of course, husband. Whatever pleases you." The pieces were in motion now. The board was set. And this time, I would not be the sacrifice. While Elena prepared our home for Marcus's visit, I focused on expanding my influence at court. The Emperor had taken a liking to me after my northern campaign, but military heroes were common enough in our empire's history. I needed to make myself indispensable. In other ways, I cultivated relationships with the Imperial Treasury officials, offering insights on military expenditures that saved significant sums. I forged alliances with merchant guilds by negotiating favorable trade protections. I even befriended the palace scholars discussing philosophy and governance late into the night, ensuring my name was mentioned favorably in their historical records. Most crucially, I positioned myself as a moderate voice in the Imperial War Council, advocating for strategic patience when others called for immediate conquest, and decisive action when others counseled excessive caution. The Emperor began calling on me specifically during meetings, valuing my balanced approach. "General Zhao becomes more valuable by the day," I overheard the Imperial Chancellor remark to another official. A man of both sword and brush, equally, comfortable in battle or court. My military colleagues found my political ambitions amusing at first, then impressive, then concerning. Many warriors viewed the court as a den of vipers, preferring the straightforward dangers of the battlefield to the hidden daggers of politics. "Be careful swimming in those waters, Zhao," warned General Teng, an old friend who had fought beside me in the north. "Court politics have drowned better men than us." "Perhaps," I replied, "but those men weren't swimming with poison already in their veins." He looked confused by my metaphor, but I merely smiled. How could I explain that I had already died once at the hands of these plotters? That every political maneuver I made was guided by knowledge from a future that would never come to pass? The night Marcus came to dinner, I arranged everything perfectly. The finest wines from my cellar, delicacies from across the empire, musicians playing softly in the garden. Elena wore blue silk that brought out the amber in her eyes, her hair arranged in an elegant style that had always been my favorite. When Marcus entered our home, I watched their faces carefully. Elena maintained perfect composure, greeting him with the polite formality of a minister's daughter toward a returning official. Marcus bowed deeply to us both, his handsome face betraying nothing beyond appropriate pleasure at the reunion. But I saw the momentary pause when their hands touched in greeting, the slight dilation of Elena's pupils, the almost imperceptible straightening of Marcus's shoulders. They were masterful actors, these two who had planned my death. But I had the advantage of having seen the final act of their play. "General Li," I said warmly, clasping his shoulder like an old friend. "Welcome to our home. It's been too long." "General Zhao," he replied, matching my tone. "The honor is mine. Your exploits are legendary." "Please," I laughed, "call me Wei. We served together after all." Another lie, but one he couldn't refute, without admitting he had no memory of me. Dinner proceeded pleasantly enough. We discussed political matters, court gossip, developments in the border regions. I deliberately brought up shared childhood experiences in the capital, watching as Elena and Marcus navigated the conversational trap. "You both grew up in the Central District, did you not?" I asked innocently. "Surely your paths crossed before now." They exchanged a brief glance that confirmed everything. "Our fathers were colleagues," Elena acknowledged, smoothly. "We attended some of the same festival celebrations as children, I believe. Minister Wu's garden parties were famous," Marcus added, "though I was often away at military school." I nodded, smiling. How fortunate that we can all be friends now. The capital can be such a lonely place without allies. As the evening progressed, I excused myself several times, allowing them brief periods alone together. Each time I returned, they were sitting slightly farther apart, their conversation slightly more formal. I pretended not to notice, playing the oblivious husband perfectly. When Marcus finally departed, I kissed Elena's temple affectionately. "A pleasant man," I remarked. "We should invite him again." "If you wish," she replied, her voice carefully neutral. The following weeks established a pattern. Marcus became a regular visitor to our home. I made a point of befriending him publicly, bringing him into my political circle, introducing him to my allies at court. I spoke highly of his military experience, to the emperor, recommending him for positions of increasing responsibility. To the outside world, we appeared to be mentor and protege, the established general elevating a promising young officer. In private, I watched as Elena and Marcus exchanged glances when they thought I wasn't looking, how their hands would brush accidentally when passing objects, how they would find reasons to be in the same part of the garden during larger gatherings at our estate. I began a campaign of strategic absence, leaving them more opportunities to meet. I accepted diplomatic missions that took me from the capital for days at a time. I scheduled military inspections that kept me occupied from dawn until late evening. I pleaded exhaustion and slept in my study on the nights I was home, giving Elena freedom to move about unwatched. All the while, my network of loyal servants reported everything to me. The whispered conversations in the garden, the letters delivered by trusted messengers, the lingering embraces when they believed themselves unobserved. I compiled every detail, every piece of evidence, building a case that would destroy them, both when the time came. But I needed more than just evidence of an affair. That alone might embarrass Elena and damage Marcus's reputation, but it wouldn't deliver the complete destruction I sought. I needed proof of treason. My opportunity came when the Emperor announced plans to expand our influence into the western provinces, territories rich in resources but plagued by bandit kingdoms and tribal warfare. The Imperial War Council was divided on how to proceed, with some advocating full military occupation and others favoring diplomatic alliances with local powers. I publicly supported Marcus's proposal for a combined approach, targeted military, operations against the most troublesome warlords, followed by installation of imperial administrators backed by permanent garrisons. The Emperor approved the plan, and on my recommendation, appointed Marcus to lead the diplomatic mission to the west. A tremendous opportunity, I told him at a celebration feast. The Emperor rarely trusts such important negotiations to one so young. You've made quite an impression. Marcus inclined his head modestly, but I could see the ambition burning in his eyes. Thanks to your support, General Zhao. I won't forget it. We rise together, I said, raising my cup in toast. For the glory of the Empire. What Marcus didn't know was that I had planted seeds of failure within his mission. Through my merchant contacts, I ensured that key Western chieftains received false intelligence about imperial intentions. My agents spread rumors that the diplomatic mission was merely a pretext for full military occupation. By the time Marcus arrived in the Western territories, local resistance was already organizing against him. The night before his departure, Elena was unusually attentive, serving my wine herself, asking detailed questions about my schedule for the coming weeks. I pretended not to notice how her hands trembled slightly, how her smile seemed forced. Will you miss me while I'm overseeing the capital defenses? I asked, stroking her cheek. Of course, she replied, leaning into my touch. Though I understand duty must come first. I smiled, thinking of the vial of foxglove I had discovered hidden in her lacquered box that morning, the same poison that had killed me in my previous life. She was impatient this time, planning my death before Marcus had even secured his position in the West. Always so understanding, I murmured, kissing her forehead. What did I do to deserve such a wife? The question hung between us, heavy with unspoken truths. In her eyes, I saw calculation, not love, but also doubt. The husband she planned to murder was not the same man she had married. Something in my demeanor unsettled her, though she couldn't quite identify what. Good. Let her doubt. Let her wonder. The game was far from over. Marcus departed for the western provinces with an impressive entourage, his new authority evident in the imperial banners and guard detail accompanying him. Elena watched the procession from our courtyard, her face a mask of appropriate wifely disinterest. Only I noticed how her fingers clutched her fan too tightly, how her eyes followed his figure until he disappeared from view. That evening, she claimed a headache and retired early. Through my network of servants, I learned she had spent hours writing a letter, which she burned before sleeping. The ashes revealed nothing, but her actions confirmed my suspicions. With Marcus gone, she would find other ways to communicate with him. I gave her the opportunity. I increased my absences from home, citing expanded duties at the palace. When present, I retreated further into the role of the distant, preoccupied husband, spending evenings in my study with scrolls and maps, rarely seeking her company. She responded exactly as I anticipated, growing both restless and bold. Twice weekly, she visited the temple of the moon goddess, ostensibly to pray for my continued success and our future children. My informants reported that she regularly passed messages to a merchant's apprentice there, a young man with connections to the western trade routes. I intercepted several of these messages, carefully breaking the seals and resealing them after reading their contents. The letters were encoded naturally, but the cipher was one I recognized from my previous life. Military communications often used similar methods during campaigns. In them I found what I needed: evidence of their evolving plot against me. "The garden must be cleared before new seeds can be planted," Elena wrote in one message. "The northern wind grows colder and more unpredictable. When the western sun rises fully, we must act quickly." Marcus's replies were more cautious but equally damning. "The western fields require more cultivation than expected. Patience serves us better than haste. The northern wind still holds favor with the mountain. Wait for my signal when all is properly prepared." I smiled as I resealed their treasonous correspondence. They spoke of me as the northern wind, a reference to my military background. The mountain was clearly the emperor. Their caution amused me. In my previous life, they had moved more quickly, perhaps too confident in their plan. This time, they sensed something different about me, some threat they couldn't quite identify. While they plotted, I strengthened my position at court. I made myself invaluable to the emperor, offering solutions to financial shortfalls, mediating disputes among noble families, even improving the training regimen for the imperial guard. I cultivated support among the scholar officials, the merchant guilds, and the military leadership. I became, in every sense, a man too powerful to fall quietly. Reports from the western provinces confirmed that Marcus was struggling. The local chieftains resisted his diplomatic overtures, suspicious of imperial intentions. Minor skirmishes erupted along the borders. His requests for additional military support were delayed at my subtle suggestion, as I cited concerns about depleting the capital's defenses. Through it all, I maintained a public stance of complete support for Marcus. I praised his efforts in war council meetings, suggested honors be granted for his service, and even sent personal letters of encouragement. To anyone observing, I was the definition of a loyal friend and mentor. Elena grew increasingly anxious, as weeks passed without the success Marcus had promised. Her temple visits increased in frequency. She became distracted during meals, retiring early with complaints of various minor ailments. She watched me more carefully, studying my interactions with palace officials, questioning me about court politics with newfound interest. I gave her cause for hope by mentioning concerns about my health, suggesting that the strain of my dual responsibilities to the military and court was taking a toll. "Perhaps I should request relief from some duties," I told her one evening, rubbing my temples as if pained. "The emperor demands much, and I find my strength is not what it once was." Her eyes lit with barely concealed anticipation. "You push yourself too hard, husband. Perhaps a tonic would help restore your vitality. I could prepare something from my mother's recipes." "How thoughtful," I replied, taking her hand and kissing it gently. "But not necessary. Rest will suffice." The disappointment that flashed across her face was quickly masked, but I saw it clearly. She was ready to act, waiting only for assurance of Marcus's secure position in the West. But that assurance would never come. 3 months into his mission, Marcus sent an urgent request to return to the capital. His diplomatic efforts had reached an impasse. Several minor conflicts had erupted despite his negotiations. The emperor was displeased but granted the request, expecting a full accounting upon his return. The night before Marcus's scheduled arrival, Elena approached me in my study. She wore her finest silk robe, her hair arranged beautifully, her face painted with subtle artistry. She carried a tray with a wine decanter and 2 cups. "You work too hard," she said, setting the tray on my desk. "Come, drink with me. Let us remember we are husband and wife, not merely 2 souls sharing a house." I smiled, watching as she poured the wine. Her hand was steady now, her movements graceful and assured. She had made her decision. "A special blend?" I asked, accepting the cup she offered. "From southern vineyards," she replied smoothly, "with herbs to soothe the mind and renew the spirit." I raised the cup to my lips but did not drink. "Strange," I said, inhaling the aroma. "It reminds me of something. A scent from long ago." Her smile faltered slightly. "Perhaps from your childhood? Many herbs grow in the north." "No, more recent." I set the cup down and rose from my desk, moving toward her. It reminds me of death, Elena. All color drained from her face. What do you mean? Foxglove has a distinctive smell when brewed, I said conversationally, circling her like a predator. Sweet but with a bitter undertone, subtle enough to hide in wine but not from someone who knows exactly what to search for. She backed away, bumping against the wall. You're speaking nonsense. The stress has affected your mind. Has it? I picked up her cup and offered it to her. Then drink with me. Show me there's nothing to fear. Her eyes darted to the door, calculating an escape. I should call the servants. You're unwell. They won't come, I told her calmly. Not tonight. We're alone, wife. Just as we were in my last moments of my previous life. Previous life? Real fear crept into her voice now. You speak like a madman. I set the cup down and took her hands in mine, feeling them tremble. Do you know why I married you, Elena? Despite knowing every lie you would tell, every betrayal you would attempt? She shook her head wordlessly, eyes wide. Because I died by your hand once before. Poisoned with foxglove on the night of my return from the northern campaign. While you whispered that it was always him, always Marcus, as I choked on my own blood. Her face went completely white. That's impossible. You can't know that. And yet I do. I released her hands and stepped back. The heavens granted me another chance, to understand why, to see if you could choose differently, to determine if what we had was ever real. You're insane, she whispered, but doubt clouded her eyes. No, I'm awake, and I've watched you plot my murder a second time, with the same man, for the same ambition. Tears spilled down her cheeks, ruining her careful cosmetics. Wei, please. You're my husband, I care for you. Care enough to poison me twice? I gestured to the wine. Your timing is poor this time. Marcus returns in disgrace tomorrow. The Western mission has failed. There will be no governorship, no escape from the capital, no future where you rule together over anything but ruins. She collapsed to her knees, her composure finally shattering. It wasn't supposed to be like this, she sobbed. We were meant for each other, but my father forbade it when Minister Li fell from favor. He pushed me toward you instead, the rising general with the emperor's ear. And so you chose murder over divorce, I said coldly. How pragmatic. What will you do? She asked, looking up at me through tears. Turn me over to the Imperial Guards? I considered her for a long moment. This broken woman bore little resemblance to the cold-eyed poisoner of my memory. Perhaps in another life we might have found happiness, or at least honesty between us. No, I said finally. Not yet. First, you'll watch as everything you plotted for crumbles to dust. You'll stand beside me as the loyal wife while your lover faces the consequences of his failures. You'll smile and play your part perfectly, knowing that I know everything, that your fate rests entirely in my hands. I helped her to her feet, wiping tears from her face with surprising gentleness. Go to bed, Elena. Rest well. Tomorrow begins the performance of your life. She stared at me with new eyes, seeing for the first time the man who had returned from death to claim his vengeance. Fear mingled with something like awe in her expression. Who are you? She whispered. The man I married would never speak this. Wei. The man you married died by your hand, I replied. I am what remains. What you created with your betrayal. She fled the room, leaving the poisoned wine behind. I locked the door behind her and sat at my desk, staring at the cup still filled with death. Tomorrow Marcus would return. The final act would begin, and I would orchestrate every moment of their downfall. Morning arrived with a perfect, cruel clarity. I dressed in my formal court robes adorned with the insignias of my rank and the medals of my military service. Elena appeared from her chambers looking pale but composed, clad in silk the color of jade, her hair arranged impeccably, her face a polite mask that revealed nothing of last night's confrontation. You look beautiful, I told her, fastening a necklace of pearls and jade around her throat. My fingers lingered there, a reminder of how fragile life could be. "Thank you, husband," she replied, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. We traveled to the imperial palace in silence. Word had spread quickly of Marcus's return. The court buzzed with speculation about the failed Western mission, about what consequences might befall the once promising young general. I guided Elena through the crowd with a possessive hand at her back, noting how courtiers watched us, sensing some shift in the political winds. The emperor had called for a formal audience to receive Marcus's report. Such public accounting was rare and spoke volumes about the sovereign's displeasure. As a senior member of the War Council, I took my place on the dais to the emperor's right. Elena was seated with other officials' wives, visible but separate from the proceedings. Marcus entered with diminished pageantry, his travel-worn appearance, a stark contrast to the splendor with which he had departed. He knelt before the throne, head bowed in the perfect posture of a subject awaiting his ruler's judgment. "General Lee," the emperor's voice carried through the hushed hall. "We anticipated reports of success from the western provinces. Instead, we hear of unrest, failed negotiations, and wasted imperial resources." "Your Majesty," Marcus began, his voice admirably steady, "the Western chieftains proved more resistant than anticipated. Their demands were unreasonable, their suspicions deeply rooted. I believe they received false information about our intentions before my arrival." A murmur passed through the assembled officials. Marcus was suggesting sabotage, a serious accusation that implied enemies within the court itself. "An interesting theory," the emperor replied, his tone dangerously mild. "And whom do you suspect of this sabotage, General Lee?" Marcus hesitated, clearly aware of the treacherous ground he navigated. His eyes flickered briefly toward me, then away. "I cannot say with certainty, Your Majesty, only that messages must have preceded our diplomatic mission, poisoning the well before we could draw from it." I stepped forward, bowing deeply to the emperor. "With Your Majesty's permission, I may offer some insight." The emperor nodded for me to continue. "General Lee's mission was ambitious and complex," I began, my voice carrying easily through the hall. "Perhaps too complex for one of his limited experience. I say this not as criticism, but as observation from one who has managed similar diplomatic challenges." Marcus stiffened, his gaze sharpening on me. I could almost see his thoughts, racing, trying to determine if I was offering him an escape or driving the blade deeper. "However," I continued, "I have received reports that may explain the Western resistance." I produced a scroll from my sleeve and presented it to the emperor. This intercepted communication suggests that someone indeed undermined General Lee's mission before it began. The emperor unrolled the scroll, his expression unchanging as he read its contents. It contained one of the messages I had intercepted between Elena and Marcus, carefully edited to remove any reference to their relationship or plots against me. Instead, it appeared to be correspondence between Marcus and a Western informant, discussing how to manipulate the negotiations for personal gain. "This is forgery," Marcus protested, his composure cracking. "I sent no such message." "The imperial scribes have verified the handwriting," I replied calmly, having ensured they would do precisely that. "And there is more." At my signal, Imperial, guards entered the hall, escorting between them the merchant's apprentice who had carried messages between Elena and Marcus. The young man looked terrified, as well he should. "This man confesses to carrying treasonous correspondence," I announced, "not only regarding the Western mission, but concerning matters more directly affecting the throne." The emperor's eyes narrowed. "Explain yourself, General Zhao." I bowed again. "With deepest regret, Your Majesty, I must report that General Lee has been engaged in a conspiracy to secure the Western provinces not for the Empire, but for himself. The failed negotiations were intentional, designed to create instability that would necessitate military intervention, which he would then lead, establishing himself as the region's de facto ruler." Gasps echoed through the hall. Such ambition was the highest form of treason. Marcus's face drained of color. "This is madness," he shouted, forgetting protocol in his desperation. I have served the Empire faithfully. These are lies crafted by enemies to destroy me. Not lies, I corrected, producing more scrolls. Evidence gathered over months. Testimony from multiple sources. Communications with dissidents in the Western territories. Plans for governance separate from imperial oversight. Each document was genuine in its way, though skillfully altered to tell the story I needed told. I had prepared them meticulously, ensuring they would withstand imperial scrutiny. The Emperor received each scroll, his expression darkening as he read. And there is one more witness, I said, turning to where Elena sat rigid with horror. One whose testimony may prove most damning of all. The entire court turned to look at my wife. She sat frozen, eyes wide with fear and confusion. She could not understand how I had manipulated this moment so completely, how I had twisted their own plot against them. Lady Zhao, the Emperor addressed her directly. It seems you have knowledge of these matters. Approach and speak the truth before your sovereign. Elena rose on unsteady legs and walked to the center of the hall. She knelt beside Marcus, careful not to look at him, though I could see her hands trembling. Your Majesty, she began, her voice barely audible. I know only what my husband has shared with me of General Li's mission. Nothing more? The Emperor pressed. You received no private communications from General Li during his absence? She hesitated, caught between competing terrors. Admit to receiving messages, confirming my accusations, or deny everything and risk being exposed as a liar if evidence existed. I met her eyes across the hall, letting her see my absolute certainty. I had orchestrated this moment perfectly. Whatever she said now would condemn them both. I received letters, she admitted finally, her voice steadier. As a childhood friend, General Li occasionally sent personal news along with his official reports. The content of these letters? The Emperor demanded. Elena closed her eyes briefly. I could almost see her calculating which lie would cause the least damage. Reminiscences of our youth, she said carefully. Observations of the Western territories. Nothing of political significance. Then you would be willing to submit to imperial examination? The Emperor asked. To have your correspondence reviewed by court officials? Terror flashed across her face before she controlled it. Of course, Your Majesty. I have nothing to hide. A loyal wife, I interjected smoothly, who perhaps did not recognize the true nature of what passed through her hands. General Li may have used her innocent nature to further his plans. It was the perfect escape I offered her, though it would do nothing to save Marcus. She could claim ignorance, preserve some shred of dignity, avoid the most severe punishments. All she needed to do was sacrifice her lover completely. I watched the calculation in her eyes, the weighing of survival against loyalty. In my previous life, she had chosen ambition over love when she poisoned me. Would she make the same choice now? Your Majesty, she said, her voice suddenly clear and strong. I cannot claim such innocence. I knew the nature of his ambitions. I failed in my duty to report them. A wave of shocked whispers swept through the court. She had just admitted to knowledge of treason, potentially condemning herself alongside Marcus. It was the one move I hadn't anticipated, the one choice that surprised me. The Emperor rose, his face like stone. General Li Marcus, you are stripped of rank and title. You will be imprisoned until a full investigation determines the extent of your crimes and appropriate punishment. Imperial guards moved forward, seizing Marcus by the arms. He did not resist, his eyes fixed on Elena with a mixture of gratitude and despair. Lady Zhao, the Emperor continued, your complicity in this matter cannot be overlooked. However, in recognition of your husband's service and your eventual, if late, honesty, you will remain under house arrest pending further investigation. I stepped forward again, bowing deeply. Your Majesty is wise and merciful. May I request that my wife remain in my custody? I will ensure she cooperates fully with the investigation. The Emperor studied me for a long moment. You show remarkable composure for a man betrayed by both friend and wife, General Zhao. I serve the Empire above all, Your Majesty, I replied. Personal feelings must be secondary to duty. He nodded. Slowly. Very well. Lady Zhao will remain in your custody. See that she does not leave the capital. As the guards led Marcus away, he locked eyes with me one final time. That gaze, I saw understanding dawn. He knew somehow that I had orchestrated everything, that I had known all along, that his downfall had been inevitable from the moment I welcomed him into my home. Elena remained kneeling, head bowed, until I approached and helped her to her feet. Her face was composed, but tears streaked silently down her cheeks. Why? I whispered as I led her from the imperial hall. Why confess when I offered you escape? Because, she replied, so softly only I could hear. I wanted you to know I am capable of loyalty, even if it was never to you. I took Elena home, in silence, the imperial guards flanking our palanquin, a visible reminder of her changed status. No longer the respected wife of a powerful general, but a confessed traitor under house arrest. Servants scurried away as we entered our estate, eyes downcast, afraid to look directly at either of us. News traveled quickly in the capital. Remain in your chambers, I instructed her when we reached the central courtyard. Your meals will be brought to you. Your maidservant may attend to your needs, but she will report everything to me. Elena nodded, her face empty of expression. She had not spoken since her confession in the throne room, since that unexpected moment of loyalty to Marcus that had surprised even me. I must return to the palace, I continued. The Emperor has called an emergency meeting of the War Council, in light of today's events. Of course, she said softly. Duty above all. As she turned to leave, I caught her arm. Why did you do it, Elena? Why choose Marcus over a comfortable life with me? She looked at me with eyes that seemed suddenly ancient, weary beyond her years. You ask as if you don't already know, as if you haven't always known. I want to hear you say it. She sighed, a small, defeated sound. We were children together. He was my first love, my only love. When his father fell from favor and our betrothal was broken, I thought I would die from grief. My father arranged my marriage to you instead, the rising star, the Emperor's favorite general. So you married me for my position, while loving him all along. At first, yes, she admitted, but then I came to respect you, to care for you in my way. You were kind, honorable, everything a husband should be. If Marcus had not returned, perhaps that would have been enough. But he did return, and reminded me what it meant to feel alive. Her gaze hardened slightly. You changed after we married, became distant, preoccupied. It was as if you married me to possess me, not to love me. I almost laughed at the irony. In this life, I had deliberately created that distance, but in my first life, I had loved her completely, only to die by her hand regardless. So you plotted my death, I said flatly. Twice. She flinched at the accusation. The second time was desperation. You seemed to know everything, anticipate everything. I felt trapped like a prisoner in my own home. The poison was a final resort, not a first choice. And if I had drunk it last night, I would have regretted it, she said, simply, but not stopped it. I released her arm. Go to your chambers, Elena. We have nothing more to say to each other. She bowed her head and walked away, her steps measured and dignified despite everything. Even in defeat, she maintained the grace that had first caught my eye, that had made me love her in another lifetime. At the palace, I found the Emperor, and War Council embroiled in heated discussion. Marcus's betrayal had created a significant void in our Western strategy. Various generals argued for immediate military action, while ministers counseled caution and renewed diplomatic efforts. The Emperor silenced them with a raised hand when I entered. General Zhao, you have done the Empire a great service by uncovering this plot. What counsel do you offer regarding the Western provinces? I bowed deeply. Your Majesty, this crisis presents an opportunity. The Western chieftains rejected General Li because they sensed deception. Let us now approach them with absolute transparency. I propose a personal mission, not of conquest but of partnership. The council chamber erupted in debate again. My proposal was unconventional, offering more autonomy to the Western territories than traditional imperial policy allowed. Yet it addressed the underlying issues that had made Marcus's mission impossible from the start. When the argument subsided, the Emperor studied me thoughtfully. You would undertake this mission yourself, despite your responsibilities here at court? With your Majesty's blessing, yes. I believe my military reputation will command respect, while my approach will show we seek genuine alliance, not domination. The Emperor nodded slowly. Very well. You will depart in 1 month's time with full imperial authority to negotiate terms. The Western provinces are vital to our security and prosperity. Do not fail us, General Zhao. Never. Your Majesty. As the council adjourned, the Imperial Chancellor approached me privately. A masterful performance, he murmured, both here and in the throne room earlier. One might almost think you had planned for Marcus's downfall from the beginning. I met his shrewd gaze calmly. I serve the Empire in all things, Chancellor. Marcus served only himself. And your wife? What fate awaits the lovely Elena? Justice, I replied simply. Nothing more, nothing less. He nodded, seemingly satisfied, though his eyes remained calculating. The Emperor intends to elevate you further, you know. There is talk of creating a new position, Imperial High Commander, with authority over both military and diplomatic affairs. You would stand second only to the throne itself. I am honored by His Majesty's confidence. As you should be. The Chancellor lowered his voice further. Though I wonder between us how you will address the matter of succession. A man of your position needs sons, yet your marriage is now, shall we say, complicated. I smiled thinly. One challenge at a time, Chancellor. The Western provinces. First, family matters will resolve themselves in due course. In the following weeks, I prepared meticulously for the Western mission, while simultaneously securing my new position at court. Elena remained under house arrest in her chambers, emerging only when I required her presence at official functions. She played her role perfectively, the penitent wife seeking redemption through silent obedience. Marcus languished in the imperial prison, subjected to multiple interrogations. I visited him once, ostensibly to extract information about Western contacts, but in truth to satisfy a more personal curiosity. He looked up from the straw mat that served as his bed when I entered his cell, his once handsome face now gaunt and shadowed with beard. Recognition flashed in his eyes, followed by a dull hatred. Come to gloat, General Zhao. His voice was hoarse from disuse. To understand, I corrected, seating myself on the single wooden stool. Why risk everything for ambition? You had position, respect, a promising future within the Empire. He laughed, a harsh, broken sound. You know why. You've always known. It was never about ambition alone. Elena, I acknowledged. You would tear down an empire for her. As would you, apparently. He studied me with surprising clarity. How did you know? About us, about our plans? We were careful, meticulous. I smiled slightly. Let's say I've seen this particular play performed before. She confessed to protect me, he said, wonder creeping into his tone. I never expected that. Nor did I admitted. It seems we both underestimated her capacity for loyalty. What will happen to her? I considered my answer carefully. That depends partly on you. His eyes narrowed. What do you mean? Your trial approaches. The evidence against you is overwhelming. But if you were to take full responsibility, to state that you manipulated Elena, used her past affection to involve her unwittingly in treason, her sentence would be considerably lighter. You want me to sacrifice myself completely to save her? He shook his head slowly. You must truly love her despite everything. Do we have an agreement? I pressed, ignoring his observation. He was silent for a long moment. Yes, he finally said. I'll say whatever you want. For her sake, not yours. The distinction means nothing to me, I replied, rising to leave. Only the result matters. 3 days before my scheduled departure for the Western provinces, Marcus's trial concluded with his full confession, exactly as I had orchestrated. He accepted complete responsibility for the treasonous plot, claiming to have manipulated Elena through their childhood connection. He was sentenced to death by beheading, to be carried out immediately. I arranged for Elena to witness the execution, though not as public punishment. I told the Emperor it was necessary closure for her, a final severing of the connection that had led her astray. In truth, I wanted her to understand the completeness of my victory, to know that nothing remained of the future she had planned, with Marcus. We stood on a balcony overlooking the execution ground, Elena pale but composed in white mourning robes. When Marcus was led out, he looked up, somehow finding her despite the distance. No words were exchanged. None were needed. Their eyes held each other until the executioner's blade fell. Elena made no sound, shed no tear. Only the slight trembling of her hands, gripping the balcony rail, betrayed her emotion. "It's finished," I said quietly when the deed was done. "Is it?" she asked, her voice hollow. "Or does your vengeance require more blood? That depends on you." I turned her gently to face me. "I leave tomorrow for the Western provinces. When I return, I will hold a position second only to the Emperor himself. I could set you aside, divorce you publicly, leave you with nothing. Or you could remain my wife, gradually regain position and respect, perhaps eventually even freedom. What would you require of me for this generosity?" Her eyes were wary, suspicious. "Absolute loyalty," I said simply. "Not love, not devotion, just unwavering loyalty to me and the Empire. No more plots, no more deception. And if I refuse? Then you will live out your days in comfortable but complete isolation, remembered only as a cautionary tale of a woman who betrayed her husband for a traitor." She looked back at the execution ground, now being cleaned by imperial servants. "You speak of loyalty as if it can be commanded, controlled. It can't," I acknowledged. "But behavior can be. I don't need your heart, Elena. Only your obedience." "The man I married would never have spoken this way," she said softly. "Sometimes I wonder if you are the same person at all." I thought of my death in that other lifetime, of the poison burning through my veins as she whispered her true allegiance to Marcus. "I'm not," I told her honestly. "That man died the moment he realized the depths of your betrayal." She studied my face for a long moment, as if seeing me truly for the first time. "I'll give you my answer when you return from the West," she said, finally. "If you return." "I will return," I promised. Death couldn't keep me from my vengeance the first time. Nothing will stop me now. I left the next morning for the Western provinces, my new authority evident in the imperial retinue accompanying me. The mission was successful beyond even the Emperor's expectations. I negotiated alliances that secured the borders while respecting local autonomy, established trade agreements that enriched both the Empire and Western chieftains, and planted the seeds for eventual full integration into the imperial system. When I returned to the capital 3 months later, it was to unprecedented honors. The Emperor created the position of Imperial High Commander, elevating me above all other officials. The court that had once viewed me as merely a successful general now regarded me with awe bordering on fear. I had become more than a man, almost a force of nature unstoppable in my ascent. Elena awaited me in the central courtyard of our estate, kneeling formally as I entered. She wore blue silk, my favorite color on her hair arranged simply but elegantly. "Welcome home, husband," she said, her voice clear and steady. "The capital has eagerly awaited your return." I gestured for her to rise. "And you, Elena? Have you eagerly awaited my return as well?" She met my gaze directly. "I have had much time to reflect during your absence, on my choices, my mistakes, my future. And your decision? I will remain your wife," she said, "with complete loyalty, as you demanded, not from fear or lack of options, but because I choose to build something from these ruins if possible. I studied her face, searching for deception and finding none. Why? After everything? Because Marcus is gone, she said simply. Because the life I imagined with him died long before he did. Because you, despite your coldness, your calculation, have shown more honor than I deserved. You could have had me executed alongside him. Instead, you offer a future. I took her hand, feeling its warmth against my palm. Not the future you wanted. No, she agreed. But perhaps the future I've earned. In the years that followed, I ruled as imperial, high commander with wisdom tempered by hard experience. The emperor relied increasingly on my counsel until, in all but name, the empire was mine to command. Elena remained by my side, the perfect political wife, gradually regaining respect at court through charitable works and gracious diplomacy. We never spoke of love again. The passion that had once existed between us was replaced by something like mutual respect, a partnership built on clear understanding rather than romantic illusion. She bore me 2 sons who would ensure my legacy continued long after I was gone. Sometimes, in rare unguarded moments, I caught her looking at me with an expression that mingled fear with fascination, as if still trying to understand the man who had returned from death to orchestrate such complete vengeance. I never explained the mystery of my rebirth, the impossible knowledge that had allowed me to rewrite our fate. Some nights, alone in my study, I would pour a cup of wine and contemplate how completely the heavens had granted my desire for revenge. I had taken everything from them, just as they had once taken everything from me. Marcus was dead, his ambitions turned to dust. Elena lived in a gilded cage of my creation, bound to me by circumstance and choice rather than love. And I ruled, just as I had promised myself on that first night of my rebirth, with power beyond what either of them had imagined possible, with scars that I wore like a crown, visible only to those who knew where to look. Was it worth it? The question haunted me occasionally, usually when watching Elena with our sons, glimpsing moments of genuine happiness in her smile. Had I become the monster they feared, or merely the architect of justice they deserved? I never found a satisfactory answer. Perhaps there wasn't one. Perhaps revenge, like love, defied simple categorization. It transformed you, consumed you, left you changed in ways impossible to predict. One truth remained absolute. I had died once by betrayal and returned to claim what was rightfully mine. Not just position or power, but the knowledge that in this life at least I had written the ending to our story. And in that ending I walked away stronger if scarred, powerful, if solitary in that power, victorious, even if victory tasted more like ashes than wine.